Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's CRM Magazine web event brought to you by NICE, Verint, First Orion, and Optimize. I'm Bob Fernikes, and I'm the publisher of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled Personalization Done Right, Using Data and Technology to Strengthen Customer Relationships. But before we start, I just want to explain how you can participate in this live broadcast. At the end of the event, we'll have a question and answer session. So if you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box, click on the submit button, and we'll try and get to your question at the end of the broadcast. But if for some reason we can't, because we don't have enough time, don't worry, we'll follow up within a few days via email. Plus, if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download a PDF from the Handouts tab on the console once the event is archived. And just for participating in today's event, you could win a $100 Amazon gift card. Now to introduce our speakers for today, we've got Michelle Carlson, Senior Product Marketing Manager at NICE, Dave Singer, Vice President, GTM Strategy at Verint, BK Smith, VP Product Management at First Orion, and Patrick Costello, Senior Director Product Management at Optimize. So now I'm going to pass the event over to Michelle Carlson from NICE. Welcome to the broadcast, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Bob. I'm so excited to be here with everyone. Personalization is one of my personal favorite topics. It's always exciting to think about how we can use data to make experiences better for not just our customers, but also for agents and everyone at our brands that are servicing today's consumers. So I'm Michelle Carlson. I'm from NICE. NICE is an organization that focuses on bringing AI and analytics to businesses across the world. And what's exciting today is that we've all been to this place with legacy CX, and our legacy CX is about voice interactions and a customer reaching out to an individual agent. But it turns out that today's customers, only 19% of interactions are through voice channels exclusively. What's changed today, and the pace of consumer expectations and consumer interactions is changing so quickly that now 81% of interactions occur through different avenues other than voice alone. So customers are talking, emailing, chatting, searching, posting, connecting, calling, and texting, and using apps to communicate not with just a single individual agent that's the face of a brand, but with the brand as a whole, which kind of brings us into this idea of this holistic customer experience, which also means that it is personalized. So it's not just the brand, it's the whole brand on every channel. And this shift from 19% of interactions exclusively on voice into 81% of interactions on all of these different channels has happened so quickly in the past 2 years, and kind of really shifting into this digital space while we've all been at home and changed our workplaces to be from in-person, or changed our retail or other habits to be more in that digital space. And what's interesting is that even with this accelerated pace of change that we've had, still customer experiences will change more in the next 5 years than they have in the previous 15. So we're just living through this expedited cycle of technology and change and innovation where there's this constant creation of new consumer expectations. So at the heart of the expectations is that the growing number of consumer needs, which are constantly evolving, and these needs and this change that's constant is shaping how customers perceive their journey experience. So we can summarize kind of along these following 5 different needs here. So I will just jump right into this. So they want organizations to fulfill their full range of needs based on traditional service and kind of that idea of the resolution in traditional channels. They want something that's effortless, and effortless means something different for every single person. So being able to understand individually what it means to resolve an issue or how that customer actually wants to interact or research. They also want you to meet them on their preferred channel of choice. So I just said, most of these interactions have shifted from voice exclusively into all of these other channels of text and chat and digital and social different places. So whatever channel they happen to be on today, tomorrow might be a new one. So businesses need to be ready to be able to adapt and evolve in order to meet each customer where they are. Customers also want smart self-service because it's usually the first place they go to, whether it be through a search engine or the company's website or through the company's app. They want to be able to interact with self-service to resolve their issues Few people have as much bandwidth or availability to be exclusively on a voice channel and dedicate that time now today. Before, people would maybe spend 30 minutes making a hotel reservation. You don't have a captive audience to do that today the way that you used to. So self-service is rising in importance, but not everything can be automated either. So while we're talking about digital and we're talking about self-service and consumers using these other channels, we also have to understand that customers have to be able to effortlessly move across all these different channels. So the data and the technology and how we integrate human-assisted channels into that conversation changes as well. And then finally, in the spirit of today's discussion, really focusing all of this on personalization. And personalization affects every aspect of these in terms of how customers want to interact and expect to be interacted with. And they're okay sharing some personal information about themselves, but they need to, they also expect you to use that information to improve their experience. So it's not just to share information with a business, but to be able to change how they're interacting with their business or change their experience with you altogether. So at the heart of personalized experiences is the understanding that to get the experiences right, they need to be built and managed based on data. So to personalize every touch point of the journey, whether it's on self-service or in voice channel or moving fluidly between those channels, it's really important to harness all this conversational data across the board so that you can use it in a very effective way to tailor every single experience. So what we do at NICE, we help organizations stop kind of this guesswork around what customers actually need and instead inform their entire CX organization with the right self-service and agent-assisted interactions driven by artificial intelligence that's based on, actual customer experience conversations. So conversational data, and we call this Enlightened AI. It's purpose-built AI for customer experience because we've trained all of this AI with customer experience interactions to use across different business use cases. So whether that's to identify needs for self-service all the way through an agent-assisted call, or connecting the customer with the most suitable agent when they do need a live interaction, or you could use the same data to guide agents in real time to help with soft skills and identify not just that the agent should be empathetic, but how they should be empathetic for that specific customer based off of how the customer is communicating and the customer's past interactions. And then finally, to measure every interaction for coaching and process improvement by analyzing and evaluating every single interaction that's coming in. Businesses gain these insights around how to tailor and personalize every experience, and then can continue to use that insight to improve interactions with not just that future customer, but with all future customers to get a better understanding of how people are interacting across the entire journey. And that's really ultimately what transforms business outcomes, whether it's handle time or CSAT or customer effort that you're looking at. Using this holistic CX data across the agent and the customer experience is what changes how businesses evolve in terms of their brand and their interactions with customers. So one aspect of this is understanding the agent experience and learning how agents interact with individual customers. And we frame this in terms of before, during, and after. These are things that you could be thinking about to personalize customer interactions across the board, how you can help your agents. So by automating agent tasks, understanding what customers need so that agents don't have to focus on mundane tasks. They're emotionally, physically, available to be able to help customers and fully engage in every interaction, which helps set them up for success. And then, you can also help agents by transferring knowledge from different channels. So if it's moving from a self-service into agent-assisted channels, give the agents the insight of what the customers communicated and what their experience was before they hop on the phone. Then during the interactions for agents, it's helpful to provide some real-time behavioral coaching. So this goes into that example I mentioned about empathy. Not just, hey, deliver empathy to this customer, but this customer would really appreciate knowing a time frame, or this customer would appreciate that you respond and you let them know that it must be so difficult for them, or that you're very sorry about the situation. And those types of empathy are subtle, but the differences are extremely important to really personalize a customer's experience. And then finally, also recommend the best action or the next best action. So should this agent email? Should they follow up? Should they change a process? Those are all different options for them to be able to do. And after, being able to use all this data for coaching is really important too. And then from the customer journey side, how do customers benefit from this level of personalization from data that's coming from AI? They can resolve more of their needs in self-service, which means they don't have to call as often, so it helps with the call volume, but it also improves their experience because, again, 81% of customers are starting with a channel other than voice today, and that's really a big shift in terms of expectations that are shifting. When your customers connect with agents that get them, we've all been at we used to go to parties, maybe not so parties so much anymore, but when you're talking with somebody new or you're networking even virtually, you can tell when you click with somebody, and being able to set up a customer to have that sort of a conversation with an agent is really important. It can change the entire experience of the interaction. And then being able to tailor empathy and conversation in the moment, giving your agents the right cues so that they know how to connect with the customer and how to improve their overall experience. That's where all this data, when you look at it through a lens of AI, you're looking not just at one interaction, but across every interaction and across every customer. You can also, for customers, decrease their effort with seamless and connected touch points, so they don't have to call again in a couple of days. There's a follow-up. There's a process put in place to make their whole conversation more seamless. And then finally, to continuously improve every single interaction so that when a customer calls in, they know they're not starting from, their base zero, they're starting a few steps ahead. So every single interaction is continually better than the last, either because the agent has learned something new or because processes have changed, but you're using strategically the information from every single customer to be able to personalize their experience, but also extrapolate and improve all customer experiences as well. So ultimately, with smarter, more personalized experiences, it's possible for businesses to improve every channel, every interaction for every customer. And at NICE, we do that with Enlighten AI. It's out-of-the-box AI that's purpose-built to improve CX. So, these couple thoughts on personalization today, and that's my presentation. I am Michelle Carlson from NICE. Feel free to find me on LinkedIn. Bob, back to you.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Michelle. Really tight presentation. Now I'm going to pass things over to Dave Singer. Again, Dave is Vice President GTM Strategy at Verint. Welcome to the broadcast, Dave.
Thanks, Bob. I'm really happy to be here. Excited to talk about data and personalization. Like Michelle, it's a topic I'm quite passionate about, so this should be fun. I'm going to really focus today on talking about the data side of what do you need to be able to drive personalization. I'm really going to take it in 3 blocks. Why is the data problem to have the right data to be able to personalize appropriately difficult? What is and getting worse? What is the impact of that difficulty? And then what can we do about it? How can we help solve for that problem? Because the data we need really needs to be incredibly complete and fine-grained. There's a quote I like from the book Commonwealth of Self-Interest by Paul Greenberg. He talks about demographics of one, right? It's no longer enough to look at broad swaths of what's going on. You need to be able to get down to that level of what does each individual need for their personal journey, their personal experience. So there we go. So recent changes around customer behavior, workforce dynamics, and acceleration of digital have and will continue to have a deep and lasting impact. At the beginning and through the middle of last year, people were talking about the new normal. And really now we'll talk about the now normal, because whatever's normal now may last a month, 6 months, or 2 days, right? And we need to be able to understand and adapt to those changes and understand what they mean completely and as close to real time as possible. But the challenge is that through these changes, it's driving what we at Verint call the engagement capacity gap. And what that really refers to is that through all these changes, the number of interactions and the speed of growth of interactions is going up dramatically. Customer expectations are going up at the same time, and workforce dynamics are becoming more complex. one of the things we've seen is that the belief that, well, as we add more digital channels, interactions will migrate from voice to digital is just not the whole story, right? Some do, but the more channels expand, the more total number of interactions grow. So as Michelle talked about, we need self-service and all kinds of other things to help contain that, because budgets and resources aren't going up at the same speed that these things are driving expectation and growth. So that gap between the what needs to be solved for and the people who do it is what we call the engagement capacity gap. And basically look at the stats on the right basically boil down to say, of the 2,000 customers we surveyed, this is a problem, it's going to get worse, and the things they plan to do to solve for this problem weren't able to be achieved. So, and what that results in, what are the problems that business leaders are seeing, right? It's, 94% of them are having trouble understanding and acting on rapidly changing customer behaviors, right? We don't know how things are going to evolve, how they're going to land, and how do we understand and act on that in as close to real time as possible, right? As all of the communication channels and modalities and approaches grow, and those could be either assisted serve or self-serve, any engagement channel is valid. Many of them contain their, they'll store their own interaction record, or they'll store their own experience record. And so being able to look across all those data silos is incredibly difficult. And again, the old theory that, hey, as people talk about the same things wherever they are. So if I understand my voice channel, I can apply those learnings everywhere. Again, it's not the whole story. Some things are common, but people speak about very different things depending where they are. An example I use, my pandemic skill was bread baking, right? So I learned to bake bread last year, and I was browsing around on one of the baking sites I look at and trying to find some information on sourdough starter. Now, I never would have called in a million years to ask a question about it, but there's a chat window there, and I was able to jumped on, ask some questions, talked to one of their baker's assistants, and got out. That's an interaction that never would have happened without the digital channel, and took a very different case than something I would have called about. So really being able to overcome data silos to get that unified channel-specific view is very important. And then, again, challenges using, taking all that with, again, aggregating unified views of customer feedback and experience to improve the experiences. And if we can't do that, we can't build enduring customer relationships and enduring customer engagement. And just to highlight on the data problem, again, of the customers we surveyed, 90% of them have moderate to high impacts of increased difficulty in pulling together customer engagement data that's affected their ability to use analytics and drive insights and drive personalization. So this, again, said the data problem is bad. It's getting worse, and it's impacting all the things people are trying to do to solve for customer experience, to solve for customer engagement, and to solve for that gap. Because really, netted out, customer expectations are high. Understanding customer interaction experiences across all channels and all modalities is essential to driving business success and underpinning these personalization models that go on. I just realized I've been throwing out the word customer engagement a lot here. It's again, being at Verint, I live and breathe that all the time, but it's worth a minute to explain what do we mean by that versus customer experience or interaction. Well, customer engagement I think of as the combinations of interactions and experiences over time. And to deliver great customer engagement, you need to deliver the right experience in the right number of interactions over the right period of time. So what I mean by that is, if all I want to do is check my bank balance, I want to do that in one interaction on my mobile device, and my experience will never be a delighter. It'll be just fine, right? And that's perfect engagement for that activity. But if I'm applying for a mortgage, there's the opportunity to delight me in that experience with that process, and I'm going to do that via a phone call, emails, web portal, over some period of weeks. And so it's a different set of interactions and modalities and time driving a different expected experience. So that's what we think of as the science of customer engagement, and understanding that demographic of one for high personalization is how you drive that really effectively. So just spent half my time talking about how this is such a big problem. So how can we solve for it? So what we think about, I'm just going to build this out, is an engagement data hub. So it gives us the ability to unify every type of multimodal interaction and experience data in one place, normalized into a single data model that allows us to make sense of each engagement, ability to be enriched, so we can add in customer IDs, customer demographics, additional outcome data, and then make it freely available to drive fine segmentation down to that demographic of one. And again, having that normalized data in a single place versus scattered across different styles and different formats is what allows that to be possible. So different representation here, really could bring in from any part of the organization, any kind of interaction, any kind of experience, great analytics and enrichment models around ensuring compliance and outcomes. And then all of that is openly available to drive personalization engines, analytics and AI engines, feed applications, and feed into data lakes. And what that can look like, the kind of insight it can give you, we'll see here, is really this kind of journey experience overlay. So if we look at the top left segment here with the journey breakdown, you can see on the left it calls out what percentage of customer journeys follow what path. And again, as I think as Michelle pointed out before, very few of them are just phone calls. I don't think that even shows up here anymore. Everything starts digital, blends to social, goes all over the place. And then you see at the bottom the scale of experience, right? Red is bad, green is good. So we can see how does each journey relate to an experience. And we see anyone who starts on social then goes to email, or starts on social and ends up in a call, those are bad, right? Things that start digital, stay digital, tend to be good. Social media to chat to call is a natural progression. So that's a very strongly positive experience. And with the right level of data we talked about, you can drive fine segmentation by filtering this down to that demographic of one, or down to really fine-grained demographics to drive that personalization. So when we have that data, when we have this insight, it means, when we have, an organization with multiple assistant self-service channels, everything can be ingested, all interactions, all experiences can be brought into one place. Enrich them with customer identifiers and transaction history, so we have product and preference data in there. And then all of that is fed out for propensity and journey analytics, and that fine segmentation level, driving the right level of personalization for your organization. So, we talked a lot about personalization, and without engagement data management, without this unified data hub that provides that fine-grained data needed, the efforts can miss the mark. They can be too broad or too coarse granularity and not get to what your customers are expecting. So with that, thanks for everybody's time listening. Those are my slides. And Bob, I'll turn it back to you.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Dave. And thanks for throwing in that bit about customer engagement versus customer experience. I kind of use those interchangeably too. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people do. So now I'm going to pass things over to BK Smith. Again, BK is the VP Product Management at First Orion. Welcome to the broadcast, BK.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it. And Dave, I'm glad I'm not the only one that picked up a pandemic hobby. Mine was gardening, so I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to discuss with you personalization as it relates to the brand, as it relates to brand and communication, and how it can bolster adoption, strengthen customer relationships, as well as increase retention. Right. So again, I'm BK Smith, Vice President of Product Management here at First Orion. Maybe you've heard of us or the work that we're doing in the industry. However, if you're not familiar, I'd like to encourage you to look up firstorion.com and let us know if you need anything. We're doing amazing work in brand communication and protection space. So just some brief history about us real quick. We got our start back in 2008 combating an issue that all of you are aware of, or maybe experiencing that's keeping bad actors from taking advantage of users and providing transparency in communication. So who's calling and why? So it's a significant problem in the environment that of distrust that has been created by all of these bad actors has affected brands' ability all over the world to have meaningful connections over a phone call. In fact, 87% of all unknown calls go unanswered. And when they do answer, they usually are not prepared at best to engage with who's calling. And at worst, a caller spends valuable time convincing the end user that they're legitimate and the reason for the call is legitimate. And so here's just a little bit more information about how significant that problem is. And so scams are big business. So big that 95% of users in the U.S. survey said that they have received a scam call. So we're talking about $30 billion business. So just to put that in perspective, if all the bad actors were a collective, then they were sitting and they were all there together, it would be sitting at 101 on the Fortune 500 list, right between Tesla and Philip Morris. And so that means for us that they're not going anywhere anytime soon, and they're not going to stop doing what they're doing, right? And so now let's talk a little bit about the solution. So we believe branded communication gives brands the ability to make clear and meaningful connections with every single call. And the independent data that we've gathered underscores that, right? The users have a higher perception of the brand and feel more valued as a customer with personalization. So with First Orion's branded communication solutions, both engage and inform, we give brands the ability to identify who they are, right? And the results of that is higher engagement and more meaningful connections that results in answered calls and higher conversion rates. And so not just business, right? It's personal. And, you know, here's a few stats that I'll leave you with that I believe are telling and about branded communication and where we are today. 84% of users surveyed would feel more valued as a customer, right, with using branded communication. 77% of users said that they would view a brand as more premium or has more prestige. And 73% would even consider switching to a competitor for a trusted experience. And honestly, I think the stats are just too pointed to ignore that particular fact. And so if you're making outbound calls today, or if it's part of your business or clients you represent, and you're looking at personalization solutions, I'd ask you to consider your life cycle, customer life cycle, and digital touch points, right? So maybe it looks a little something like this, maybe quite different, but you could probably pick out the key components or key areas within your that customer cycle evolution where a phone call fits in. You can see from the moment of awareness through the customer life cycle, there are key moments where a call is relevant and in a pivotal touch point. So with First Orion, we just make all those touch points meaningful while increasing brand awareness, right? So all those key moments where a call matters, when someone wants to answer, when you want them to pick up the phone and you want to illuminate who you are and why you're calling. And so with that, I want to thank everyone to allow me a few moments to blab about branded communication and all the cool work we're doing at First Orion. And we'd love the opportunity to help you make every connection count. If someone is looking for more information, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. You can reach out to me at Brian K. Smith on LinkedIn. Bob, back to you, sir.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, BK. Now I'm going to pass things over to our next speaker, Patrick Costello, Senior Director, Product Management at Optimizely. Welcome to the broadcast, Patrick.
Thank you so much. Hey, everyone. So yeah, I'm Patrick Costello, and I lead product strategy for personalization experimentation solutions at Optimizely. As you all know, it's never been more important to rapidly adapt to customers' interests and needs. So I'm going to speak with you about the many ways you can adapt by personalizing experiences, and then where we at Optimizely recommend focusing your attention. And I'll also share how personalization can be used with experimentation to unlock even more value. So I'm going to start by giving you a brief overview of Optimize, just so you have some context for where we're coming from. First, let's start with our mission. So Optimizely is a digital experience platform, and so as a DXP, we want to help teams deliver transformative digital experiences, and a key to making that possible are digital optimization solutions. So that includes personalization and experimentation. And our goal overall, we really aim to help make digital sophistication simple and accessible for our clients. We have a team of over 1,200 people working across 32 locations globally. We've got 1,000 implementation partners. Collectively, we support about 9,000 global clients, and these are a mix of like enterprise and mid-market brands. And clients are using our tech to personalize billions of experiences and run tens of thousands of experiments. And we also support these, support folks beyond just that. We also have a powerful CMS platform, B2C, B2B commerce engine. Today, we're going to focus on personalization, recommendations, and experimentation, which we support in our intelligence cloud and full stack solution sets that you can see on this screen. So let's dive in. Everyone is competing on experience at this point, and the bar has never been higher. Customers are no longer adapting to you. In order to survive and really thrive, your digital experiences have to be adaptive. So you have to adapt to your customers, otherwise risk fading away into obscurity. So it's never been more important to do that. And on the path to becoming an adaptive organization, there are sort of three phases that we see: sort of out of the box as a first, and then responsive as a second, and adaptive as a third. When you're using out of the box solutions, you've built a digital customer experience that's like an online outpost of your analog business. When you're on the responsive level, so the next tier up, you can change certain aspects of your digital experience to better meet customer demands. And then when you're kind of truly adaptive, you're able to create a customer experience that is constantly changing to meet changing customer demand. As you move from out of the box to adaptive, you're going to take your business from not just surviving, but to thriving, and have a much more frictionless, continuous improvement and adaptation process. As you might imagine, investing in personalization is a critical part of advancing along the path to becoming an adaptive organization. Now, personalization has a singular goal: deliver an experience that meets someone's individual needs and interests. Tailor it for them so the experience resonates more, creates more value for the customer, and more growth for your company. But I would say that personalization as a concept can be sort of vague. People make generalized reference to personalization all the time, but the act of personalizing experiences means different things to different folks in different organizations. In practice, it's a very multifaceted endeavor to pursue. And if you're going to pursue it, it's pretty important that you're aware of the many forms it can take, so you can narrow down precisely which types are most applicable to your org, and then pursue, which ones you want to pursue initially and then move into over time. So here's like just a very short list of some of the major ways people do digital optimization. On the left, you have different ways you can personalize experiences, and these kind of fall into two categories of like targeted experiences and targeted recommendations. And then on the right, you have the many channels where you can apply these types of personalization. So again, for any given organization, some or all of these could be applicable. And when you start out as an org in personalization, you may just have a couple of these combinations. You can see there's kind of 42 types of personalization on this slide. And again, this is not entirely comprehensive, but I'm not going to make you all do any mental math to calculate permutations, but mixing and matching just what I shared on the previous slide could yield millions of unique combinations of personalization that a given organization could pursue. The point is that personalization is quantifiably multifaceted, and there's no single right combination for every team. But what you'll find is that the 80-20 rule applies to your investment in personalization, where 20% of your investments yield 80% of the overall value that that personalization is going to deliver for your business. Now, whatever approach you pursue, you got to do it in a focused, efficient, and scalable manner. And I think that it can be hard to narrow down where to focus. I'm going to reframe things a little bit in terms of areas where you can, actually apply this optimization. And it's framed in terms of optimization, since that's ultimately what personalization is doing, optimizing a given experience for a given user. So first, we see a lot of value in optimizing who experiences reach with behavioral, contextual, and predictive audiences and targeting. So that could mean that you target an experience as someone who maybe already purchased something from you in the past 30 days, or someone who looks like they may have a high likelihood of making a purchase based on predictive audience marketing. Optimizing who experiences reach is the first element of an effective personalization program. Optimizing what, is kind of the next thing that we see as important. Doing that with AI-driven product and content recommendations. That's where it really shines. So with product recs, Optimizely uses over 100 different AI machine learning models to power product recs with new predictions generated for the user in real time. And then on the content rec side of things, that's powered by natural language processing, with AI models built for unstructured text. Next, you want to go in and optimize when experiences are happening with flexible and automated cross-channel triggers. And you can personalize these by selectively enrolling certain segments of customers based on behavioral, contextual, predictive elements. So for example, you could personalize the experience for a visitor to your site who you detect has never shopped with you before, and hit them with a 10% off discount after they scroll down your landing page a certain amount, or when they exhibit intent to leave your site. Next, you can optimize where experiences are activated across multiple channels spanning the customer journey from email to SMS, web, and it kind of all seamlessly tie that back to customer context so that the experience feels personalized. Lastly, you want to optimize, sort of how experiences are presented to users with sophisticated experimentation. So that's what I want to dive into in the time we have remaining on the experimentation side. So, specifically how personalization and experimentation can be used together. Now, personalization makes it really easy to ensure that you're showing the right thing to your audience in an automated, scalable way every time they interact with your brand. But personalization doesn't tell you whether there's a way to fundamentally improve things like the design flow or an experience to improve your KPIs. That's what experimentation is really good at. So it allows you to go in, take a data-driven approach to determine what customers prefer and make sure that you're building the right things. Just to ensure we're all on the same page, an experiment is basically an exercise to refute or validate a hypothesis you have. And in a digital context, the most basic example might be something like the split test concept you see here, where your team hypothesizes that perhaps maybe swapping the color of the buy now button on a product checkout page will increase the conversions of the product page visitors to buyers. So you can use a thing like, Optimizely to go in, run, analyze the experiment over the course of a couple of weeks, observe what the outcomes are, and then implement those changes. There are a whole bunch of ways that you can run experiments. These are some common use cases here. There's really no end to it. If you've got an idea, you can probably experiment on it. Now, sometimes you want targeted experiences with personalization, and sometimes you want targeted recommendations with personalization, and sometimes you may want to actually experiment with recommendations and experiences. Here's what it might look like in practice to weave experimentation and personalization together. So you could nest content recs into an experiment in order to assess the impact of those recs for different personas you're interested in tailoring experiences for. Another example, you could simply test different recommendation strategies and evaluate whether one personalization widget works better than another personalization widget. And you could do this with multi-arm bandit experiments and really amp up performance quite a bit. Now, just to wrap things up, there is a lot of value in ensuring that you're exploring not only what is the best thing to show each person, but also how you should show those things. And so that's why we're thinking that combining experimentation and personalization is really important for a lot of organizations to consider, just because it really helps amplify the impact of each of those investments and give you a fresh approach to unlock more growth for your team. And if you would like to learn more, recommend you visit us at optimizely.com. And that's it from my end. Back over to you, Bob.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Patrick. We'll be moving into the question and answer section right now. So if anybody has a question out there for any of our speakers, please type them into the question box and we'll get to them. Hey, Michelle, I'm going to jump back to you. And I have a question. How does AI gather the data it needs to personalize interactions? Can you kind of explain that process to us a little bit?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Bob. That's a good question. So it seems, nowadays that AI is everywhere. And really what it's done in the space for personalization is it's made it easier to understand, what customers need, but also to do it at scale. So individually, when you're talking with somebody, you can adjust and you can connect with them. And what AI allows us to do is look at all these different channels and look at every interaction and try to find the patterns and try to find the things that make each conversation unique, but also what makes it work so that businesses can replicate it, whether it's on self-service or if it's in the voice channel, but being able to look at conversations and connections in a way that allows people to recreate that experience, not just one time, but for everyone on every channel. So I think, when you're thinking about how is AI doing this, how is AI helping with personalization, it's giving us this ability to do more of what's good, more often and better.
All right, fantastic. Dave, what do you miss if you don't have a complete view of engagement, interactions, and experiences over time to drive personalization? Can you kind of go over that a little bit for us?
Sure. Yeah. Again, it's a good question. It's all about the data you need when you need it. So if you have interactions without experiences, you know what people have done, you know what paths they follow, but not if that's because that was delighting them or disappointing them or it's the only thing there. If you have experiences without the interaction, you know how people feel about working with you as a brand, but not why and how you got there. And if you don't span all this over time, you don't know if what you're looking at is, now or from 6 months ago, right? Things change so fast that a preference or experience from 6 months ago may not be valid today, and the personalization models need to keep evolving. So if you don't have this complete view, you'll either mistime your personalization, or you'll misfocus your personalization because you'll focus personalizing on things that people are doing because they have to, not because they want to.
Okay, fantastic. BK, how does branding your business phone call strengthen the customer relationship? I hope you can go over that a little bit for us.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So, I believe the marketers, that is possibly on the line, definitely understand the value in being able to, utilize 32 characters to show and illuminate who's calling. Or to go beyond that, to use branding itself, the logo and the reason for a call, as a solution to make a connection with the consumer. And so, but branded calling gives the consumer themselves the confidence of who's calling them. And that just makes it a ton easier for them to answer, right? And so it's a trust thing, and with additional tooling for, things like spoof mitigation, it really provides a trust factor with those consumers.
Fantastic. I actually got one of those calls this morning. Yeah, timely.
Congratulations. It was probably
Yep. Hey, Patrick, you mentioned multi-armed bandit experimentation at the end. Can you give us a explanation of what that is exactly?
Yeah, definitely. So in the presentation, I shared a visual example of what a split test might look like, where maybe you have two different colors of buttons and you're evenly split traffic between the two of them. So that would be like a traditional split test. But a multi-armed bandit experiment doesn't actually split traffic evenly between the variations you're assessing. Traffic is actually instead dynamically allocated to the best performing variation guided by machine learning. So, with the two variation split test, traffic would be split 50-50, but with the multi-arm bandit, perhaps 60% of the traffic goes to the better converting variation and only 40% to the lower performing one. And you can think about it in terms of like how you're spending your traffic. If you can spend more traffic on the variation that converts better, you're going to get more conversions than if you evenly spent your traffic between variations. So multi-arm bandit optimization is a really, really powerful complement to split tests. Each is valuable in different situations. And that's actually why Optimizely supports both. But just as an example, like a split test is the best solution if you need to have, an experiment where you need really high confidence in which version was best and worst, and learning is your primary objective. Whereas multi-arm bandit would be best if you want to really automatically optimize performance and get directionality without guesswork. And multi-arm bandits work great with personalization just as well as a split test would.
All right, fantastic. Okay, we're going to jump back to you, Michelle. What work do users or customers need to do to train the AI? Here's a question I think that pops up probably a lot for you.
Yeah, and that's a really good one, because as businesses are, looking into AI, they have data teams or they have analyst teams, and they're thinking, I've got to do all this work to pull all these data elements together. What's really interesting, from the NICE perspective in what we've done in building out our AI is we've looked at all of these CX conversations and already purpose-built these out-of-the-box AI models that understand, everything from sentiment to how to build your self-service to vulnerable customers for anyone that's in EMEA or complaint management, to be able to understand what data is influencing all of these different outcomes. And with this purpose built based on customer experience, there's no building that needs to happen. It's already built into the model. So it saves teams from having to go hunt down data and track down data and train the data. My background is in product development and in building these algorithms, and there's so much work that goes into to remove bias and to make sure that they're working appropriately. By having this purpose-built CX AI, businesses can already start looking at outcomes and focus on taking action versus, spending all this energy to make sure that they're building the right models and getting the right data pulled together. So, that's a long way to say there really shouldn't be any training from your specific team, at least not heavily, but expertise on, your business can always add to your understanding and really focus on how to drive the outcome from this purpose-built, out-of-the-box model.
Okay, fantastic. Dave, I have a question from Lynn, specifically about Verint, and the question is, how does the Verint multi-channel engagement analytics integrate with similar data provided by marketing automation platforms such as ABM or social listening platforms?
Sure.
I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit.
Sure, happy to. It's again, it's, as you've probably noticed by now, love to talk about data all day, every day. So, so it's a good one. So we talk about, it's funny, we talk about data silos are bad, but data hubs are good, right? So where I think of a data silo, you have data silos when you have multiple repositories of like data, right? So if you have 3 places you've captured voice recordings and 5 places with chats, those are silos because all interaction type data. Hubs are when you have, a single place that holds common data. So the engagement data hub has all of the interaction experience or the engagement data. Marketing automation platforms or ABM platforms will contain, again, just all of the marketing or the account data. So really it comes down to like the data model of the engagement data hub is built around engagement. The data model around, CDPs or CRMs is built around the customer. The data model of, ABMs or that kind of platform is built around either a customer or an account. And what we want to do is bring in the data elements that are relevant to enrich an interaction. The most common one we see is interaction experience. The most common we see is customer identifier, so that you can relate these things. And then all of these hubs should work together in a like in a web or a spoked model, so that the ABM can draw insight from any of the engagement data. The engagement data can be enriched by anything from the ABM, and all of that links back to your CRM. So it's really very much a coexistence model, and the data should have be source of record where it is most appropriate, and all of these repositories should work together in a seamless, open way.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thanks for explaining that. You might have to explain it to me several more times before I quite honestly understand it. But okay.
No worries.
You're the data guy. Hey, BK, what are some good use cases for branded calling and connecting with customers?
Sure. I mean, there's plenty of different use cases that you can draw from, but just here's a few. For example, home delivery, the ability to schedule delivery windows for appliances, right, or announce arrivals. In the financial institution, industry, calls about fraudulent activity on a card, or, I just signed up for this mortgage or loan application. And also, industries like insurance, where there's a renew lapse policy situation, or to offer new rates, right, if you have the ability to reach out to that customer.
Fantastic. And Patrick, we're going to give you the last question that we have here, unless I see one that pops up. And the question is, how long does it typically take to run an experiment, and how does that change if you're using personalization on top of it?
All right, yeah, definitely. So the time it takes to run an experiment really depends on how much traffic you have, so site traffic, and also what confidence level you want to hit, and the minimum detectable effect you want to be able to pick up on, and then also how many variations you're testing. So there's a bunch of factors there, and that can seem overwhelming to have to think through, but we do provide a calculator on our website to help you understand how long things might take to run. But as a quick example, let's say that you had 250,000 site visitors in a month, and you're running a test on your homepage with 3 experience variations. It might take you 2 to 3 weeks to get a clear result. That said, if you've got millions of site visitors, you could turn things around much faster. But the thing is that with personalization on its own, you don't need a whole lot of traffic to have value from that. With experimentation, you do require a bit more traffic, but if you're layering personalization into experimentation, you're pretty set, because the upper bound of traffic requirements would be defined by the experiment more so than personalization. And weaving in personalization is not going to meaningfully change that. It would impact things if it were tied back to more variations. But on net, you're not going to require significantly more traffic to support personalization and experimentation together.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. So I'm going to give everybody a few minutes back of their afternoon. I would like to thank everyone that submitted questions, everybody that showed up today, and also our speakers and sponsors, especially Michelle Carlson, Senior Product Marketing Manager at NICE, Dave Singer, Vice President, GTM Strategy at Verint, BK Smith, VP Product Management at First Orion, and Patrick Costello, Senior Director Product Management at Optimizely. And if you'd like a copy of the presentation, I know some people have asked, you can download it once the event is archived. You can review the event or send it to a colleague. You can use the same web address that you used for today's event. It'll be archived for 90 days. Don't worry, you'll receive an email once the archive is posted sometime tomorrow. And just for participating in today's event, you could win this Amazon gift card, $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will be announced on November 30th. Don't worry, we'll reach out to you via email if you're selected as this month's winner. So that concludes our broadcast for today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.